All right. This is a bit check 1 2 test 1 2. How you guys doing? This is Tiny again. TPH. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day. Let me just turn up the gain here on the mic just to make sure. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to, for those of you who don't know, this is going to be a bit of a different video. For those of you who don't know, I am a licensed financial service professional. So that's actually what I do for a real job. And what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to go over a little bit of a collection of some stuff that I am collecting. Not only because some of my friends were interested in seeing it, but also because, it allows me to sort of opine about something that I am very passionate about, to say the least. So, at a super high level, I collect currency, not only just silver, and this, of course, has been very, very cleaned silver, as you can see. That is what am I holding here? This is a 1921 Liberty Head coin, and this is a 1928 Liberty Head as well, two different styles. Both have been cleaned. And what's really fascinating, and I know this is going to be sort of, like I said, it's a weird video. What's really fascinating about these is that with coins, if you clean them, you lower their value. So coins exist in, well, actually all currencies, but coins especially exist in a weird Venn diagram of investing, and that's one thing that I really do like about them is this right here. So this coin, which, by the way, if this was not cleaned, it would be worth more money than it is cleaned, which doesn't make any fucking sense. That coin has weight in silver, so it can be sold and smelted down. So think of that as the first Venn diagram. The second Venn diagram is that it is actually currency. If it is still legal tender, I wouldn't use it for $1, but it is still legal tender. So you've got, okay, legal tender. You've got your silver currency. Then you have your I guess I need to put it up here. I'm looking at the screen. There's your historical side. Attrition is a bitch, if I'm being brutally honest. 1921, 1920, what is this? 23. Sorry, I thought that was, no, 20, yeah, 23. I thought that was an 8 for some reason. 1921, 1923. There's not a lot of those left. I'm not saying that it is hyper rare, but what I am saying is that over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, these things start to slowly bleed out. There's always going to be a lot floating around just because currency is always, you always produce a ton of currency for the years that they are in. But as years progress, some of these will be lost. A lot of these will be lost. Some of them will be damaged so that they're no longer considered collectible. It's just stackable silver. Some of them will actually be sold to banks or sold to the mint in bigger collections, and the mint is known to melt things down. So, with everything, attrition and time lockstep hand in hand. You look at the video game boom that's going on. You look at the collectible card boom, which actually Rudy from Alpha Investments got me in on that one, so I'm super happy about that. And I've got some people on the Discord server. If you're not part of the Discord server, please join. That also collect cards, and it's just one of those things where it's like you look at something that may have had a low print run, or you look at something that may have been a small little test for something that has grown super large. Like you look at the original Star Wars toys from the 1970s, when Lucas was the only one that had the rights to the toys, and nobody really knew if Star Wars itself was going to be this big, huge thing. And with how manufacturing is that you basically put in your order months ahead of time, and then you have your release date somewhere here, and then a month later or 2 months later you have your Yoda toys or whatever the hell. You go from here to here to here, and only here do you learn whether or not it's going to win. Like if you looked at some of the new Marvel movies that have come out, they are not performing as well in the box office as they hoped, and that's directly related to the toy sales. Not toy sales affect box office. Box office affects toy sales. So you come in, again, you have that multi-month runway. So you make all these orders for all these Marvel toys. The Marvel movie comes out and it bombs, but then a month and a half later, Target and Toys R Us and Amazon and everybody else, Walmart, have 10 million plastic figurines that they need to get rid of. So what happens here is that they get discounted. So you look at that arc and you look at it for stuff that you're not really paying attention to, or that's super small right now. The risk is huge, but the reward is huge. You get yourself a vinyl, God, what is it, like a vinyl Ewok, I think it is? Like an original vinyl Ewok, still in box, is a 7-figure toy. And you're looking at that like, what the hell? And it's only because now Star Wars is this huge thing, and back then it wasn't. So, okay, now there's this huge demand, and over here there's this really tiny supply. You don't have that issue with some currencies. This is one of them. I'm going to show you some currencies that you would have an issue with. One of the things that I also like to do, and this is part collection, part just appreciation, is I also like to collect failed nation currencies as well. So this is a little bit where it's like, okay, you can't get these anymore. For instance, this, right? Now I know my camera is just a webcam, so it's not really looking at, but that says El Banco Español de la Isla de Cuba. This is the the Spanish Bank of the Isle of Cuba, way back when they weren't communist. The presentation of this bill, we will provide 5 centavos in metal in Havana, 15th of May, 1896. Look at that. We'll just take a look at that right quick. Front and back. El Banco. Oh, now you're going to focus. Okay, cool. And what do you do with this? This was actually made by the American Banknote Company of New York, right? I paid $10 for it. Who cares? But what do you do with this? This is just nothing but a collector's item. I can't, like this, use it for currency. It has no metal value that, if I really wanted to, I can melt down. Oh, and by the way, there's a neat trick with metal. If you want to check if it's silver, you just, whoop. Oh man, let me see if I can do it, because it was a... Did you hear that ring? Let's do it again, real quick. If it rings like that, it's actual silver. If it doesn't, it's not. So, this is a Venn diagram that is art and history together. I don't have the metal, I don't have the actual currency. Will this be worth something other than the $10 that I paid for it? Maybe, maybe not. But how many of those exist? I mean, I paid $10 for 5 cents. I paid $10 for 5 Cuban cents. What is that going to look like in 20, 30, 40 years? Now, I don't know whether or not if you clean up paper currency, if that's going to increase or decrease the value, but we'll see. I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, if you clean up a magic card, you could get it up a couple grades. If you clean that up, will that go up a couple grades? Who knows? What I do want to show you, though, is I want to show you some more peso notes. Look at that. That's a 10 peso note, and that's a 5 peso note. Where do you think they come from? Like, real talk, where do you think these come from? If you guessed anywhere in Latin America, you're incorrect. If you guessed anywhere in Europe, you're incorrect. These are Japanese government peso notes. Look at that. Japanese government, 10 pesos, Japanese government, 5 pesos. I'll pull the 10 peso note up so that you can take a look. So what's the deal here? What's the deal with airline food, right? This is a note from when the Imperial Japanese government took over. Whoop, don't want to lose that. when the Imperial Japanese government took over the Philippines. They took United States currency, because remember, the Philippines was basically a territory of the United States. We abandoned them just before the Japanese took over. Then the Japanese took over. It's really fucked if you think about it, but that's beside the point. This isn't too much of a history lesson. This is just a, hey, look, you know. So they printed money. They didn't force the Philippines to use the yen, right? They filled out pesos. The Japanese government pesos. And it's in English because the Philippines spoke English as one of their languages. Because again, American occupation or American territorialism or imperialism, whatever you want to call it, how many of these exist, right? And look at this $5 note, number 25,866. Boom. Japanese government, 5 pesos. And then there's some Japanese text at the bottom. And here's, I don't know what this says at the bottom. I don't even know if it will focus. See? And it's real. It's really real. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you look at this kind of stuff, and this is 70 years later, give or take. And out of the entire stack of pesos that I was looking at, these are the only 2 that didn't have a stamp that said mark for destruction. Because that's what they did. At the end of the war, the Filipino government and the American government and even the Japanese government rounded up all the pesos that were printed under the Japanese government and burned them in giant lots. You do that in order to control the currency, because back then you were still on a metal standard, and the last thing you needed was inflated currency. Again, metal standard. And the last thing you needed was inflated currency coming in and tanking multiple economies, not ecosystems. There's even the seal of the Japanese Imperial Bank right there. That's incredible. Let's see if the $10 one is a little bit better. Yeah, there it is. There's the seal. You can't see that. That's terrible. All right. And so you look at this, and again, it's the Venn diagram of history, and not even currency, but of art. You know, these bills survived 70, 80 years. What was it, late 30s, well, yeah, late 30s, early 40s. So 60 years brings us to 2000 plus 2 is 80. So we're nearing 80 years of the survivors of this regime still being around. And this is paper. Paper is much more delicate than metal. You can fuck around with metal a lot more. You can't with paper. Again, think of attrition. You know, 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. Because I'm not, again, this isn't really speculation. This is just more appreciation for me. Like I said, I like collecting weird currencies. But if you think about that, how many more of these exist? Not just in perfect PMG, what's it, PMG 65, perfect graded, museum quality stuff, but just how many of these exist, period? What is the total circulation and population of that? It can't be more than 1 million, you know? And I know you're thinking, well, you know, Tiny, it's 1 million. That's a lot. I'm like, well, spread out over the entire globe, it's really not. And then assuming a 0.5% or maybe 1% attrition rate every couple of years, as things get damaged, as things get destroyed, as a fire sweeps through. Like, you think about that, like all the super rich people that have like Van Gogh's, not Van Gogh. Well, yeah, sure, they'll have Van Goghs, or they'll have Picassos, or they'll have, you know, stuff from Leonardo da Vinci, and if a fire sweeps through it or sweeps through the warehouse that it's stored in, what happens? It's gone forever. You know, if a fire takes my house, God forbid, what happens? These are gone forever. Doesn't necessarily have to be malicious, it's just life. Speaking of, so this is actually a pretty damaged dollar, but I got it because, again, I like weird currencies. I really do. It's super goofy. Bang! I'm going to read this out to you because you probably can't make that out, but when I flip it over and show it to you, you're going to see it. This is $10 of the equivalent currency of the colony value received. So that should immediately tell you what's going on. Hong Kong. Yeah, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation promises to pay $10 to the bearer of this note, Hong Kong, 31st of March, 1975. Still a British colony. There's the Seal of England. There's probably a queen of some sort. Chief accountant, general manager. It's in Chinese at the top, Chinese at the bottom. Flip it over on the back. The Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. There it is, $10. I believe they left this empty to stamp it in order to say, hey, this note has been redeemed. Hong Kong is not a British colony anymore. You can argue whether or not it's its own independent city-state or whether or not it needs to be, or if it's part of China, which, CCP has lost the mandate of heaven, and I'm on record for that, so that's fine. But just look at this. And this is the only one I've ever seen, and I know there are probably better ones out there, and it's from 1975. And how many of these do you think survived the cutthroat banking environment of Hong Kong in the 70s and 80s when you digitized? How many of these do you think survived when the CCP took over? What was it, the 90s? CCP took over in the 90s. And, why would you keep old colonial shit around? You want the new hotness to be China. How many of these do you think survived? Again, this is it's rampant speculation. I'm not over here doing it to speculate. I'm doing it because I like weird currencies. I like this kind of stuff. But this is something, this is my last one, and I actually have not opened it. It comes in a very, very tightly sealed, I don't know if you can hear me sort of busting the seal on that. Let me see if I can't slide it out without the tape catching and causing a big ol' issue. Come here. Come here, come here, come here. There we go. Okay. This... There we go. This is something for all of the real history buffs out there, and it's just, again, following on my collapsed country kick. Here we go. Stick you down. That. Let's see if I can put it here. So again, a little bit of a history lesson for you, for those of you who aren't aware. After World War I, Germany was saddled with almost the entire cost of rebuilding the rest of Europe. This caused hyperinflation for Germany because they had debt obligations they had to pay. So every few months, every few years, they had to pay X thousands, X millions of Reichmarks to their creditors in the UK, in America, and France especially. This is a Reichsbank note for 10,000 Reichmarks. This is Wehrmacht Germany currency. And I'm gonna just, let's see if I can just flip this over. Yeah. I can't read German at all, but I know there are some Germans on the server. Das Gold, das Silber und den Speck nahm uns der Jude und Lieb und something or other, Deif and Dreck. I guess they're printing a morality play on this, but look at that. There we go. That is a real good picture. And this is again failed currency. Not the best condition. But there are anecdotal stories, and people still find them to this day, of Germans getting paid in these, not worth the paper that they are on, and they're using it to wallpaper their homes. They are taking Reichmarks and they are stuffing it in their walls to use as insulation because the currency is functionally worthless. They're burning it for fuel. You're paid in paper and it's easier and cheaper, or actually I should say more cost efficient to use the paper that it's printed on as fuel for your cooking fire than it was to go out and chop down a tree. Is that going to be $1 million note one day? 1,000 years from now, probably. In my lifetime, absolutely not. But just think about it. How many of these have survived? And yeah, it is on a little white back cardboard because I don't want this to bend anymore. I don't want it to crease anymore. Like, this is not going to be a perfect grade currency by any means. But I have one. And this is just, again, it's more of a... This is less of a, hey, get into physical collectibles and ignore the stock market and blah, blah, blah. That's not the entire point of this because, again, that's not really what it is. But this is something where it's just... I like Venn diagram assets. I like assets that sit on multiple different circles. It's one reason why I like mutual funds. It's one reason why I like property. It's one reason why I like collecting currency. So it is one of those things that you look at this, and it is art, and it is history, and in some cases it's still currency, and in some cases you could sell the metal. But you look at all this, and you're holding something that is older than you and that will outlive you. And it's a nice little grounding experience to be like, I wasn't alive when any of these things were made. I don't know the stories of when and how they were, when, I know, but how they were printed or who handled them, or if this Reichmark was used to buy bread, or if it was just stuck in a banker's box and forgotten about for 30, 40, 50 years. Like, I have no way of knowing, but it's fun to speculate, and it's fun to look at this kind of stuff. And again, look at how serious these Germans are. There's no fun at all allowed in Germany. Just look at that. Signatures of people that I'll never meet that have died decades before I was born. But they were important enough to be put on currency. Pictures of what colonial governments, what administrative governments, what failing governments thought were important. The art that's there, the morality tale on the back. I think people are always people. People are always going to be people. I don't think there's going to be a lot of change 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. You're still going to have the same type of stuff, with current cancel culture and all that other stuff. I think this too shall pass. But I don't know. It's grounding. It's grounding. That's all.